Hey everyone, welcome to Sacred Stories. It is such a pleasure to be together in community. And I'm going to start with a blessing before introducing one of my favorite people, Paul Sanders. These are words from Parker Palmer, who said, "We have to create a different atmosphere for the soul to find its voice. Quiet, inviting, and trustworthy spaces." Quiet, inviting, and trustworthy spaces. And my blessing for us today is that we're able to sink into the blessing that quiet can offer us, the power of listening, the power of stepping into silence, the power of honoring the quiet, and the power of creating trust in our ability to hold those quiet, inviting, and trustworthy spaces. I loved this quote because I think it kind of speaks to some of the things that we're going to dive into today. I just wanted to introduce Paul Sanders first. I'm actually going to start with some of the things that I love and appreciate about you the most. And that is, Paul, you are such an incredibly genuine and heartfelt affirmer of beautiful qualities in others. I can think of so many times when you've said things to me about how you see me show up in the world that I don't even remember exactly what they were, but I remember the feeling that they evoked in me and just feeling so deeply seen. That's one of my favorite things about you. So I'm just really excited to be in conversation today. Paul is a life adventurer, a spiritual and relationship growth aficionado, and also someone who has a lot of gifts to offer us in those arenas. A musician, a world explorer, a mischief maker.
Yes.
What else did I leave out?
I like mischief maker.
I added that spontaneously. I love the word mischief.
Now I feel like a bar has been set and I must create some havoc.
No pressure.
In this interview.
Oh,
yes.
I love it.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I always feel like time with the rabbi is sacred, and it feels easy to say such nice things about you because you genuinely bring, this is such a real thing for me. You genuinely bring actual light into my body. And so I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that to everyone. So you've also raised another bar for me to be equally as nice to everyone next time I see them after this video. So I'll be sure to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. Compliment received. Yes. Yeah, thank you. So the reason that I created this podcast, these conversations, we'll see if they turn into a podcast one day, is really that I find that in listening to others' stories, we hear our own. And even if it's not quite the same story, these themes of what it means to be human, of some of the similar motifs and shades of struggle that we each kind of wrestle with tend to be replicated in different ways in our lives. And so I'm going to invite you to share a sacred story that's speaking to you loudly right now or has shaped your life in some way that you're sitting with.
Yeah. And in thinking about that, since you had sent me those questions beforehand, and with the climate of everything that's going on right now with George Floyd, the biggest thing that I feel is so relevant right now that in the last 2 years of my life, and that feels so important to me to say right now and to get out into the space as a white man, is the power of just stepping back, not needing your own voice to be the one that's heard. And the most powerful changes that have come in my life, which is not to say that I'm good at this, it's just that I can recognize that the biggest changes have come in my life for my own happiness and my ability to share happiness when I listen and when I schedule time to listen and sit back and after listening, listen even more.
Right.
And instead of feeling that push that is it's natural in me, and I think it's natural in a lot of people to hear and then and then talk, or my opinion, or what I feel, or the baggage that I'm bringing to the table that's just going to spill out is XYZ. And so there's probably a lot of stories that are attached to that for me, but the general feeling of that is strong in me right now. And the Black community is specifically asking us to mute ourselves so that we can take an opportunity to let their voices and needs be heard. And I feel it's an important message for, I'm going to say a lot of men, especially. I don't want to box anyone in or exclude anyone with that. Certainly this applies to everyone, but that's the general message that that I'm feeling, and love to have that conversation, especially with other men, and see the difference that it can make when they practice stepping back and listening.
Yeah. And even, I'm thinking even of like, maybe we're not even called to defend ourselves or be on the offense in some way, but even sometimes when we're like, oh, let me tell you about a story from my life about this, right? Just all of the ways that we can make it about us when there's an invitation just to listen and to receive someone exactly where they are. I know for myself, even there have been some posts on social media, and we're recording this, is today June 3rd? Is it June 2nd or June 3rd?
It is the 3rd.
We're recording on the 3rd of Black folks like asking to not be analyzed or judged for the way that they're responding. And I've been thinking a lot for myself about the power of just receiving someone's anger, and that is with all of my white privilege, it's the least I can do, So I guess what I would love to hear is a specific example from your life during a time when you were able to practice that. And maybe it's not related to Black Lives Matter. Maybe it's just related to being able to hold space for a person and receive them. Is there something that comes to mind?
I will simmer on that.
Yeah.
I now want to add just one other thing to that feels right to say in response, which is a lot of times as you receive something like anger or pull back and listen and experience what that makes you experience, it's uncomfortable, or it's can cause fear or bring up all sorts of things. And so, I think one of the more difficult things to just sit still with is our discomfort. And I think that was sort of probably the tail end of what real listening does is you're at some point you're probably going to be uncomfortable and have to kind of sit with that. And I think that my goal, my altruistic goal with sitting and listening is that I don't sit with it and listen and then still come back with my opinion. I mean, I might, but the idea is to come back with empathy and to wait and keep listening until that turns into some kind of form of empathy for what you've been listening to. So just that idea of discomfort feels it's difficult, and I have a lot of empathy for people who go through difficult things. We all do, and I just think it's important to sit with that.
Yeah, there's also an opening for spirit to come in. I think when we are, and maybe even I'll define spirit as just a sense of expansiveness, a sense of a deeper love, deeper force of love, when we're able to actually do that, instead of going into our own self-righteousness, or whatnot. So yeah, I've noticed in myself, even if, and I'm not talking about like society's kind of collective need for reckoning right now, but I'm just thinking of like interpersonal experiences that I've had. Even if I feel like someone ultimately didn't behave the way that I think is warranted, when I'm able to practice deep, radical empathy, I become a better person, so yeah, I just want to affirm that. So let's get specific.
Let's get specific.
I think that we can start to relate to like the threads of specific stories. What's popping up for you?
So I would say in the last 2 years, my personal relationship with my partner has been really transformational. So I can. There's a lot of examples, but something that kind of comes to mind immediately is really this moment where we tried a new. So we took this relationship course together, and we're actually certifying in it. So we're I don't know, we're going to be able to help other people soon after we finish our certification, and that's exciting because we've seen these changes in ourselves, and they've just been so real and so different than everything else that I felt. God, this sounds like an infomercial suddenly, and
No, it doesn't at all. I think people are intrigued, and we'll give them links and more info at the end. Yeah.
So we were struggling, like a lot of partnerships, like a lot of partners do. And it's weird how like you can feel like just one click off. Like this is the way I describe it, because it's like we're so close.
Yeah.
And my partner, you guys are.
I do. I'm recording with Erin tomorrow. So
yeah. And so what a wonderful person she is, and I think I'm a pretty okay person. And
most of the time.
But sometimes.
That was a joke.
And so it just felt like we were like this. Why can't we just get that last and we would loop and spiral and not like super bad arguments, but it's frustrating, and it's like it's disconnecting. And so we were learning these techniques, and we were sitting with each other, and we were going back and forth, and I just remember this moment where this particular technique is called a dyad. A lot of people know dyads, but this particular moment we were just really, really connecting like we never had, and I was in the role of asking questions and just saying thank you for her answers. And that was kind of the simple format. And I just remember something in my gut, just like my nervous system and my gut just like relaxing and connecting, and really seeing the same thing that we had talked about so many times. I finally got it, and I realized how much I wasn't listening in the past, or there was something I wasn't connecting to in the past. And through this process, we were, it was super emotional, and, we were both crying and just kind of trembling, and like, oh, it was profound. And so we've and you notch up with these kind of things, like that actually worked, and then I want to do more of that, and so we'll get up in the morning every
Can
morning
I
and
can
just
I ask you a quick
yeah,
question
yeah,
about that,
yeah.
Paul? So, what do you think it was the particular questions that enabled you to get into a space where your whole gut relaxed? Or do you think it was the fact that you weren't trying to respond and that you were just receiving them, or both? Can you
Yeah,
that out?
it's actually really clear. What we learned was it's very somatic, and so it's very body based, and so it might be so if we were doing it and we got to a challenging point, you would instead of telling me you're angry at me or you're confused about why I didn't do the dishes again, you would say, I feel tightness in my chest. And I could explore that. I could ask you more questions about that. And it's because it's somatic and it's your truth. It's not something I can argue. Can't say like, well, the dishes, you really do have this tightness in your chest. And it feels like, it feels like an intensity of 8, and it's red and it's hot and you're trembling, and then you get to explore what the thoughts are behind that, and these are your truths, and so I can't argue your truths. Right? And so there's that kind, and then there's really just the reveals of these very connective reveals of like, tell me something you think we agree on. Tell me something you like about me. Tell me something you want me to understand about you.
After this tender moment, you go to those connective questions.
You can do either, and after 40 minutes of this, you start to, if this is all you're doing, you're really just getting more familiar with your partner than you ever have. And it is extremely tender, and it's extremely connective, because you're hearing, a lot of times you just kind of loop over the same things.
Yeah.
And in these moments, after you're 20 minutes into it, you're like, oh, I've never heard that before, or I've never heard that in the same way before. I'm hearing a different layer, a different level of this. And I can connect with that level. There's something that we're finally getting to down here that I connect to, and I feel the humanity there, and I feel connected to you as, another spirit, another human.
Well, and it sounds like the repair is built in also, or maybe not the repair, but the opportunities for like heartfelt affirming, right, of what the two of you share. The other thing that I'm thinking about this is, in this dyad, are both people taking turns to share the vulnerabilities? Yeah. So I'm just thinking about like when two people are both kind of offering their heart up before them as part of an exercise, it feels very different than just one person bringing a grievance and the other person responding, right? It feels much more equal.
Yeah, there's something about it that really it really gives space, and kind of the same thing that we were talking about. It's the person asking the question can't respond. Like, there's no response, and so it's really just the other person being heard.
Yeah.
Which is not something we almost never get that. It's really strange if you think about it. When was the last time you just said something and the other person just said, thank you?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And it's easy.
Yeah.
It's maybe the easiest thing.
The easiest and the hardest, right?
It's the easiest and the hardest.
Right, because we want to go to defensiveness or justification or whatever. I mean, so many things are popping into my mind right now. Brene Brown, on one of her recent podcasts, which is called Unlocking Us, spoke about the ideas of apology in her family. And there's a whole 2-part podcast on the art of apologizing. But saying, you know, when someone tells you that they're angry, being able to receive that. And she talked about it as a mother, you know, like often parents will feel the need to kind of go into a more parental role as opposed to just being able to say, thank you for telling me, you know, or I'm proud of you for saying something hard. And yeah, I was listening to Robin DiAngelo speak on a YouTube video on my bike ride today. And she wrote the book White Fragility, which now a lot of people are reading, and told about, told about an experience where she made a racist comment, even though her entire field is diversity inclusion, right? And the way that she, you know, needed to repair that without needing her apology to be accepted or even listened to, and all these things. So it just has all these ripple effects and repercussions, I think.
And it's interesting to hear as you're saying all that, and maybe these are coming up for you because of the initial context of stepping back and listening. It really does seem like you find those things every time something works. Like if it worked, there was a stepping back and listening.
Yeah.
If it didn't work, there was probably a leaning in and forcing. And I don't know if that's true, but that feels really true in my body to say that.
It feels really true in my body too. Yeah, it feels really true in my body too. So I'm, you know, this conversation is called Sacred Stories, and we all define the word sacred in different ways. And I think the beautiful thing about spirituality is that we get to kind of put our own understanding and color on it. And so I'm kind of interested in how your spiritual connection or spiritual practices are infused into this idea of stepping back and listening, whether it's what you receive from spirit in that moment or your broader understanding of how spirit talks to you, how you're able to listen, kind of wherever you want to go with this.
You know, one of the challenges with a question like that is how much time do we have?
I know, right?
how many things can I talk about at once that fit that?
Yeah.
It's like literally like 30 things come to mind, and then
Totally.
my mind goes blank. Well, so one thing that comes up for me there is intuition, right? And like when I have, you know, one of the things I feel about intuition is just that intuition happens when you are listening, when you're open to feeling and noticing your inner voice and really paying attention to it. And I think the way that I hone that is, it's like I want to say meditation, but I'm so bad at meditation. But I also still do it, and I spend time trying. And you know, it makes me think of Dan Siegel.
Yeah.
So he wrote The Neurobiology of We. It's only an audiobook form, but he's one of those people that's putting science, you know, connecting scientific data to meditation and things like this. And so, you know, the interesting thing that he studied was when you just try, even though you think you're doing terrible meditation or you're terrible at gratitude, they've measured the changes in like the brain as, you know, so these meditations and these awareness practices, they work. And what I feel in my life just getting back into the sacred and leaving science behind for a second.
Yeah, and I'm gonna forcefully, in my tactful Libra way, say no judging our meditation practices on Sacred Stories. Like your meditation practice is just perfect, exactly the way it is. I don't think there are any like perfect meditators out there, and if there are, then I don't want to be friends with them. So, so yeah, I love that you're in the practice. That's why it's called the practice.
Well, give me, my headphones came unplugged. 1 second.
Oh yeah, no problem. Actually, Paul, while you're plugging your headphones in, I listened yesterday to Russell Brand speaking to a meditation expert, and one of the things I found very helpful was the identification of 3 different types of meditating. One is focusing very directly on one point of focus, i.e. our breath. Another is maybe what we would call more mindfulness, which is noticing the thoughts that come in and then not judging them. And then the third, which is often referred to as transcendental meditation, is really connecting with like the oneness of all. So that was really helpful for me, because I tend to like the third category of transcendental meditation is it's the easiest one for me to connect to on like a spiritual soul level, and also feels the most kind of fun and juicy. So that may be helpful for listeners as they're thinking about, okay, what are the portals that actually feel most aligned for me?
Yeah, and I think really playing around with that and having fun with it.
Lightly.
Yeah, I think there's a serious feeling about meditation, and this is kind of a serious talk we're having right now, and we're in a very serious time. But if you know me, you know I'm normally super silly and always wanting to play. And I think the reason you called me mischievous is because I'm always being ridiculous. But I think playing with meditation and being a fun person in meditation feels good to me. And so actually what that looks like for me is, because I do all those things, I just, depending on the time of day or what I want to do, what I want to accomplish, in a sense. I think actually the thing that feels the best to me right now, the meditations that I'm doing are, and I think the reason I say play with it is because I don't have a name for this. It's like my own thing.
Yeah.
But it sort of got born out of, I was listening to Joe Dispenza's book called Becoming Supernatural. And he has his own meditations, but it has these, I guess like an accompanying workbook that I didn't have, and visuals and whatever. And I didn't have those. And so he's describing things and I'm just making up my own thing. Well, later I realized I'm not doing this at all like he says. He says how to do. But I have my own version of heart coherence meditation, which to me essentially boils down to intentionally kind of like raising the frequency of every cell of my body. And another proponent of this is Stuart Wilde. If you've ever listened to his stuff, he's got this thing that I'm listening to right now called The Infinite Self, and he's hilarious. Like he's mischievous in the way that I am, and he's like, if Dispenza and I had a love child in some miraculous way, it would sound like this guy, because he's just super funny and super spiritual. So anyways, I really do get super embodied and try to just bring each cell of my body into a higher frequency, and I imagine it vibrating higher, and even like visualizing them creating, because something Dispenza talks about too is the chemicals that actually get created in your body. It's like your own pharmacy. And so I feel so good doing that, because it feels like I'm creating antibodies and creating all the right combinations of things that create a happy life and immunity and kind of hopefully, I don't know if this is true, but hopefully help people see me as a positive, happy person that they feel loved by, you know. So
well, yeah, and enable you to see them that way. I mean, think of the times when we're vibrating high, right? And I love everything that you said. I think for me, my connection to spirit, it like one of the easiest and most fun ways for me to tap into that is through joy and playfulness. So yes to that. But when we're vibrating high, whether, you know, and you can understand that as like a really good mood, you can understand it as like intentionally choosing to see and affirm the good, you know, whatever it is, everything like feels better, you know, like think of when you're first falling in love with someone, you know, and you go through your day and you've got these rose-colored glasses on and everything is ponies and rainbows and wonderful, right? The same life circumstances can happen to you in that case, or, you know, when you're feeling really crappy, and your experience of it can be totally different. So I think everything that we can do to like get ourselves into that frequency, so vital.
Yeah. Was it before our talk started? We were talking about drumming and my music. Yes. Yeah, like one of those examples for me is I've recently picked up drumming again. I was a drummer in my teens and 20s and loved it. I didn't realize back then that was one of the things that fully energizes me, and just recently got back into it. And so the only place I have to do that right now is my dark, ugly, awful basement. And I come out of my dark, ugly, awful basement the happiest that I am all day, you know, even if it's just 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I just go down there and I you know, crank out a couple songs. I come up just like I'm dancing. I'm like full of spirit. I'm full of joy, and everything makes sense. Like I'll go down there like life, and I'll come up with, I'm just like, does anyone want anything? Because I'm in a, you know, I just want to love.
Totally.
So it just doesn't matter, you know, it doesn't matter at all. Like I'm in the dark, skanky basement. It's full of joy for me. So finding that thing for you is like, find where you love to play, find where you love, where your spirit like really gets energized. Right?
Exactly. Like
where
is your portal? Yes. Where is your portal? And then tap into that so that we, you know, we can show up in the world the way that we want to. I started bringing up meditation, and I feel like I got us off track, but I want to just circle back to the idea of where spirit comes in for you, or how you understand spirit coming in for you in these relationship interactions. And I guess if as you know, you and your partner have kind of taken your own relationship and spiritual growth to these amazing heights, and you know, continuing to elevate them, I don't know if you felt spirit in those moments or have been invited to new connections with spirit for yourself. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And like I said, every morning, one of us gets up, we make coffee. The other person, you know, we have a little space set up in the living room where we actually, especially since lockdown, we every morning we turn on a beach scene on YouTube, and we sit in front of the beach. We might play some meditation music, and we'll light some incense, and we'll meditate for 20 minutes or half hour. And but I do feel it. I would say like lofty heights. You know, you said something about like we're taking our relationship and spirit to lofty heights, and I would say it's actually just feeling more and more grounded. It feels more and more like normal to, like it feels like the normal thing is to just be nice to each other now, and to listen to each other, and to just have a playful, fun, silly time with our day.
Yeah.
And so we've, you know, I'm grateful for this. I know a lot of people don't have this, but I'm grateful to have started kind of figuring that out with her before lockdown, right? Because I think
Mm-hmm.
a year ago, if we were in lockdown, we'd have been like, and probably would have figured it out, but still, but I feel spirit coming in. It feels like a back and forth. It feels like, okay, I'll put a little effort in. Spirit will put a lot of effort in, and I'll notice a little bit of that, and I'll, oh, okay, that felt nice. I kind of felt something improve in me a little bit, I think. And then I'm like, okay, well, that's motivating a little bit more, and then I can kind of feel I can feel what's not me. Like I know where my efforts end. I think if you're honest with yourself, you can pretty accurately measure, like, well, I did this, but all these other things happened. And I think when you start becoming aware of, like, oh, like, I'm putting an effort here, way more started happening than that makes any sense, right?
Mm.
And
So is spirit to you, Paul, like forces greater than yourself that are kind of responding to your frequency? Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah, I want to keep normalizing that, though, because you say greater than yourself, and I just think it's you realizing how great you are.
Well, that's what I
Yeah.
see. Yes, thank you. Because for me, spirit is like my deepest, truest essence, which is kind of what you're speaking to. And the ground, when you talk about this idea of groundedness, it's actually like being grounded into our truth, which is this generous, compassionate, love-filled essence for me, at least.
Yeah, and I think it's just a continual returning back to yourself,
Yeah.
just a
Yeah.
of kind of like, I think when I got it less, I don't know how to say this, and it just doesn't sound very humble, but when I feel like I'm starting to get an inkling of how to communicate with spirit, and I feel like there is this process of just doing less and receiving more, or doing less and having more kind of power inside yourself to just be happy. And it's all the cliche things that it feels cliche saying them, but I think I've started really being able to, like, create that cocktail in my body of, like, oh, I can actually just let that go. I don't have to put all this wasted energy into upholding this image or this argument or this block, this energy block in me, or this thing I keep struggling with. Like, just let it go. And so it turns from this lofty thing where before it felt like, man, if I could just be more spiritual, or if I could just be better in some way, or whatever, it just becomes so relaxing.
Yeah.
Just like the nervous system just chills out.
Yeah, yeah. And to me,
Easy.
I mean, if we're going to personify spirit, it's like this voice saying, I've got you, like, can just
Totally.
relax into my arms. I love this so much, Paul, because I feel like it brings us really beautifully full circle in terms of the power of listening. Like, what I'm thinking about and wondering your thoughts on are in those moments when we're able to just be quiet and to receive another, without thinking about, our next response or comment or defense or whatever. If we're able to really do that we say the Yiddish word is kishkis, it's like your guts, like in our depths. If we're really able to do that, then there's this opportunity for spirit to come in. And by that, I mean, like, we get to show up as our deepest, most grounded, love-filled essence. And we both leave changed by that interaction.
And it's so much easier.
It's so much easier on everyone. Yes.
You think about all those times where you fought so hard to hold that thing, whatever that thing was, whatever you were holding or whatever you were pushing, or just, it's so much easier not to do that thing.
Yeah. Do you have a concrete suggestion or tactic for us when we do feel triggered? You know, I'm thinking about plenty of times where, like, in my heart, I really wanted to show up as like Zen goddess, able to fully listen and receive another. And I just got triggered with old stuff, and I didn't react the way that I wanted to. What's your favorite way to kind of bring us back into the space and energy that we most want to be in?
That is a tough question.
Or how do you like to do it? Because we're all
Yeah.
different, right?
Well, I think that I'm gonna lean a little bit on the untethered soul here.
Great.
Because so being triggered, I think if I understand what Michael Singer, right? Michael Singer said in the Untethered Soul, if I understand him correctly, the thing that's unfortunate about getting into the triggered state, or like once you get there, it does kind of have to play itself out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on how intense that is, how intense that trigger is, you know, things get released into your body, and you go into your patterns, right? And so I think the way that I do it, the way that I kind of deal with this is to first, what's first? The first thing is to know, there's like a bunch of things. So know that your ego wants to do something that's probably not good for you, like fight, or respond or react. So know that ahead of time.
Right.
Knowing that ahead of time, and saying, like, you know what, I cannot let my ego ruin this for me, because you're the one that suffers. Like, the other person also suffers, but like, you've never been triggered and happy at the same time. The next thing is to admit it immediately and say, I feel triggered.
Yeah.
And another thing to pregame on this is an agreement with your partner that if I get triggered, I want to be able to say, hey, I'm triggered right now, and I'm not going to give you the best of me.
Yeah.
Let's schedule. I believe in, not like a nerdy level of scheduling, but like, hey, I know that I'm not going to come out of this for whatever it is, 15 minutes, an hour, but to say, I want to meet back up with you and pick this back up at this time.
Yeah.
And I want to have a conversation that's productive and meaningful. So I know I can't do that right now. And I know that's me. I know that's my work to do. So admitting that it's your work to do, and admitting that you're feeling that way, and asking for that reconnection later, prevents that whole cycle, that whole loop. And for me, that works. For us, that works because we have agreements in place that feel mature, that feel like we know, like, oh, you know what? I also recognize that you're triggered, and I want to give you that space and honor that you're feeling funky, and I'm here for you. And both people doing that together it's just another one of those things that, like, it also contributes to that nervous system relax, and being able to come back later and reconnect and repair.
So powerful. Yeah. Thank you for that kind of concrete approach. You know, I'm thinking too about this idea of listening, and in those moments when we're feeling really triggered and we go into fight or flight, there can be like almost higher level bird's eye view of us looking down on ourselves and saying, actually, right now, listening to my ego is not going to be helpful. Right?
It's so hard.
What I'm going to invite instead is to go bang on the drums, or go for a run, or, you know, listen to music I find soothing, or whatever we want to do to self-soothe, so that we can start to listen to this deep inner wisdom, the intuitive voice that says, okay, this other person would never deliberately do something, to hurt me. I'm being triggered because this is tapping into X insecurity, or whatever. Yeah, I love all of the different ways that listening can come in, and knowing what to listen to when, also. Yeah.
It's huge. And once you do that just even a few times and kind of get a feel for where you are with all of those little bits of trauma in your body and things that want to be triggered, you or at least like the tactic I said of like pre-gaming it a little
Yeah.
bit of
Yeah.
like, you know what I'm going to do next time, and like really seeing yourself take the lead on your ego and like take the, just like, oh yeah, I remember I said I was going to do this, and you won't want to do it. I mean, it's crazy how powerful the ego is, and just wants to like, yeah, but look at me.
Right.
And it's so critical to every time just be like, hey, yeah, next time I'm gonna do this, and recognize that's coming. And the last thing I'll say about that is like, for me, that gets, you know, at first when I started trying to work with that, it's like it's just already triggering me.
Yeah.
And it's like, as you just keep doing it, it really does, like, you do feel like, okay, I see you coming from way far away now, and I'm like, I see you.
Yeah.
How will that happen again?
A little bit easier and a little bit easier as we practice it more and more and more. And if we're really tuned into our bodies too, we'll notice when we start to get, you know, whether it's tightness in our throat or stomach or chest or wherever it is that we feel things. And then we can get on top of it a little bit earlier.
Yes. Oh, and saying those things, those somatic feelings, they're so powerful to say too. Those are, you know, we do that a lot now. I completely forgot. This is new for us.
Yeah.
But body reveals, like, I feel like I'm being triggered, and I feel it in my chest, and it hurts, and it's constricted, or my throat is constricted. And those are very helpful too, to just kind of get grounded in your body and say those out loud. Super helpful, and really connective to, because even if your partner can't connect to your subjective experience, they know what a constricted throat feels like.
Yes.
And they know what a tight chest feels like.
And it depersonalizes it a little bit too.
Completely.
Yeah. Oh, what a great conversation. I love kind of all of the different ways that we explored this idea of truly listening, and what it looks like to listen sacredly, to our bodies, to our hearts, to our own intuition, forces within and around us, which are often the same, I would say. What a treat. Yeah. So I have no doubt that listeners are going to be excited to hear kind of more about your offerings and where they can connect with you. You want to point us to some good places?
Yeah, mainly right now we just started a group recently, if you want to join our Facebook group, and I just gave it a actual link, and maybe you can put it in there, because it's like Facebook, facebook.com/groups/evolving relationships.
Evolving relationships. Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty new, and so there's not a lot of content there yet, but we are starting to add regularly. And like this week, we're kind of muting ourselves and, you know, promoting the voices of the Black community, and so that's going on. But and like I said, we're certifying right now in some of these things, so, you know, we have to kind of wait until that happens so we can do it legitimately.
Yeah.
But we're very, very excited about it, and would love to connect with people, and really just throw some questions at us. We're happy to answer some things, but yeah, please join us there. We'd love to have you.
Perfect. Evolving relationships. And I'll say personally too, I went over to Paul and Erin's house for my first in-person during quarantine visit, when it was permissible to, you know, be in a group of 3, and practice this technique of the dyad, and had some really powerful ahas and experiences. So they're just incredibly gifted facilitators, and I'm excited for listeners to get to know your work a little bit more.
Thank you so much. It's very, very sweet of you to say that. And I do hold this time, like I said, I hold this time with you sacred, and thank you for having these conversations with me and everyone. I appreciate you for doing that.
Yeah, yeah. It was such a treat. And I'm going to close with a blessing from my heart today. May we each be gentle with our hearts. May we have the compassion to listen inward and to listen to those around us, both those we know and care deeply about, and other folks who have had their voices silenced for far, far too long. And in this process of listening, may we find a connection to spirit, a connection to radical love and generosity and compassion and joy and playfulness and expansiveness that brings us back to our own center, brings us back to our own essence. And may we bring the beauty of exactly who we are to all of our conversations, both when we're sharing with vulnerability and when we're holding sacred space to listen to others. So may it be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Take care, everyone. May your day be filled with beautiful invitations to listen, and looking forward to the next conversation.